Hey, greetings, worldwide family, and welcome to the new Elder Wisdom podcast, where we seek that which has been perhaps taken from us, but seems missing in our lives, which is the guidance of elderhood by seeing what is being done and what is working out there in the world of human development and evolution. Really excited and honored today to have Jenny Lee with me from the Temple of Belonging. Jenny Lee is a transformational coach, breathwork facilitator, body worker, and community weaver devoted to truth, wholeness, and courageous integrated living. She is the founder and producer of the Temple of Belonging, a woman's gathering in the Pacific Northwest, and the creator of Truth Training, a course guiding people through personal individualization and soul level integration. Her work bridges somatic healing, mythic wisdom, and practical courage, inviting us to drop the mask, meet what's real, and live from the deep center of who we are. Let's sign them all up. Thanks for being here, Jenny. Good morning.
Good morning. I don't get my bio read to me very often, and I was really resisting the urge to act it out, to
That's
interpret a
right.
dance. That's pretty.
Let the soma speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A lot to dive into today.
hmm
As I'm learning about this podcast and the directions that I want to go, I'm starting to come to this question because a lot of people are asking me, even though this podcast is not about declaring a hard definition, but looking at the experience of what is an elder to you,
Well, let's just get in there. Let's just start with it, shall we?
please.
My understanding in relationship to elder and elderhood and eldering is influenced by lots of different factors. The parents that I came into this world with, a lot of Stephen Jenkinson's work because he speaks so directly and eloquently to elderhood. And in this moment, what feels true and interesting is that it feels like a choice, that there's a pretty robust difference between an old person and an elder. And it feels like a choice point, maybe that comes into a being at a much younger state, that is the direction that they want their life to go. And I see the elder as um, someone who's moved from the self focus to we focus to a state of being in service and understanding and serving the greater whole, the greater good, instead of just maybe the more American dream style of retirement. What can I get? I'm just going to protect me and mine and just exist in this happy little beach town for the rest of my life. Not that the elders can't do that. Um, so maybe I'm comparing it to something that it's not to understand what it is. Um, but the ways that I've seen it and the ways that I've gotten to engage with it and the ways that I feel it in my own becoming and growing up process is that there is this generosity to share one's experiences and to be available to hold that wisdom and to hold guidance for the future generations. But I think that includes a willingness to age, which both of my parents are completely unwilling to do. And I'm sure a lot of our parents and many generations have just refused the reality and fact of time, that it does what it does and that we go down this one way path and we get wrinkles and we forget things and our knees don't feel as fun as they used to or da 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 da. And um, the last time I saw Stephen Jenkinson speak, he said something really, I mean, he said lots of things, as you can imagine, because he does that. But one of the things he spoke to is like, he wants people to look their age and stop, I'm paraphrasing, but to stop fucking around and trying to be youthful and young forever so that the younger generations know what we are supposed to look like when we're 60 and 50 and 70 and 90 instead of uh, I could say being a little confused about what our bodies and our spirits do when we come of age.
Beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for that. Um, so being an elder, I think for me too means being able to admit when you've made a mistake, and I have to do that right now in that I've been only recording audio.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm gonna stop because it won't let me do it on the fly. And yes, welcome back. We just had a wonderful sponsorship from the technology gods interacting with the technologically obstinate, and overcame a quick challenge. And now we have video as well. Jenny just really pasted a beautiful picture, a wonderful understanding, full of good, full of seeking of what it is to be an elder. And it sounds like in your life, that's something that you're striving towards, to be in a position of elderhood and to take on those responsibilities in your life. And thank you for that. Um, One of these responsibilities that you're already picking up is the temple of belonging. Um, would love to hear more about it. What was the catalyst point where it was like, I need to do this, and what is it that you've been working to accomplish through that organization of one, the
Yeah.
organization of one?
I mean, I ask myself that often. I'm like, what are we doing? How did this happen? What the fuck? Um, because I think I have the personality where I just jump in to things and I follow my crazy ideas maybe more than the average Jenny. And I'm so grateful for that. And sometimes I feel like I end up somewhere and then I have to kind of step back and be like, whoa, wow, okay, that's what we're doing. And I'm still like I'm such a student of what temple belonging is in new ways every year as it continues and grows and roots down and expands and calls wider circles of people in. But the simple answer is I went to a handful of women's gatherings for the first time around like 2019, 2020. And, you know, hey, got a mother wound, got sister wounds, and was finally like, yo, if I'm gonna step into myself as a woman, like I gotta start loving and being with other women in a good way. It's not rocket science. And so I just jumped in and I had a blast. It was like so much more fun and sweet and soft and interesting and inspiring that I could have ever imagined. And it, for me personally, it wasn't this big dramatic to do. It was just this feeling of like, we're here. We're here together,
Home
finally.
again.
Oh, yeah. And I went to California for a gathering, Origins, and that was just amazing. And then I followed Origins to Costa Rica and had a great time. And then was like, I don't want to go to Costa Rica and California to hang out with women. Like, this seems like we should be doing this with the people in our actual communities. And there's other women's gatherings that sell out really fast and that are really big. And I was like, this isn't what I want. So what do I want? I want to have this girl party with people in my town. And so I was like, let's try to do that. And the first year it was just 50 women at my house at the land that I live on in Hood River. And then it just slowly grew to 130 women to 230 women. And then we're going to have 300 women this year. And it's that experience of saying yes to the thing that feels good and like trusting that clarity that we need to be doing this with local women in a bioregional way, even though that means so much more than what we're doing. Um, and then being met, other women meeting this like as a huge yes. I mean, just because we all live in the same town or Portland and Hood River, the Gorge, like my little node of the Pacific Northwest, we're all over the place, and that connection isn't implied or implicit just because we live close to each other, especially in the gorge. Things can be really siloed and we come together for these moments. But for women to really, yeah, I'm going to call it fall in love with each other and fall in love with themselves and have this deep healing. And it creates a sense of connection and kinship that is not as accessible in just potlucks and dinner parties and river hangs and the other ways that we're connecting with each other. And then it turns into this thing where like you go to the grocery store and you see like a temple sister, or you go to this other concert and there's just now this web of connection and community relationality that's working. And so it's a really humbling experience to just kind of watch the thing do the thing. And I think I catalyzed and initiated a lot of it, but I'm not making it happen. Like the thing itself, the community itself is just like the thing knows what to do, you know? And so I don't know if that answers the
In
question.
service to the thing, that which is living and needing human hands and hearts to bring forward.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of getting out of the way and trusting that we know how to relate to each other. We just kind of needed an excuse or a space to have a deep enough connection that it then sustains and fortifies when we come back to the real world, you know?
So-called real world. And so this is one gathering a year, 300 women strong
Yeah,
this year.
currently we have the annual uh party, the gathering, the thing. It's like a conference meets festival meets village meets ritual, you know, it's pretty funny to try to explain what it is. I'm like, it's just nice. It's wonderful. It's just amazing. And then we've started doing these smaller, like 50, 60 women quarterly in-person events because it just was really obvious that women want more, especially since we all live close-ish to each other, to have more in-person events instead of more online or online type of things. Part of the reason to being local is that we do actually get to be around each other's bodies more so. We're just listening and trying to figure out how to be together more often. But yeah, just the one big gathering for now and a handful of smaller day long uh, retreats and containers throughout the year.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And you have a rhythmic schedule around online meeting to check in and see what's
Mm,
alive, or not really?
it's a little fluid, just like the feminine, you know? Um, we have a really strong,
Let's do one
yeah, it's like,
now.
it's, and I have to just like, you know, I'm new to being this kind of business owner, community organizer, CEO, event producer, website editor, newsletter writer. It's like I'm in a lot of positions that are new for me, and it's fun to just learn as we go, but it's also fluid and flexible because of that. But I feel like the feminine is like, yeah, we'll just listen and see what wants to come. But we have a really engaging WhatsApp group um, where people can just come and like offer events that they're hosting and people. It's just like a little hub for the community to engage with itself. And then another little node that we have is a local women's business directory hosted on our website, which is really badass. So that, you know, part of the women's gathering and part of this, the local bioregional awareness is fortifying local economies. And I feel really inspired and personally just want to do as much as I can to support women owned businesses because that financial piece has been a huge part of the conversation underpinning everything. I mean, it's kind of the bottom line of a lot of our big dreams and goals for what we want to do in the world is that it runs on this thing called cash. So trying
Yeah.
to use leverage that.
Yeah, I like to say where there's money, there's matter. Where there's mother, we need
Um,
manners.
mm,
And I think that's a place actually that, well, at least I know my experience in the men's sphere, that we could really use that example from women of how to dwell in the marketplace in a way that is not maybe not non-competitive, but certainly competition is not the tip of the spear with men so much. It's like the identity and the purpose and the money earning is so interweaved between the, disparate myths that we're fed. And it's like I really have seen over and over again that things get shadowy in the market really quick with men. So thank you, for setting that precedent. I look forward to learning more and supporting more in that realm. And we'll make sure the people know where to go at the end of this as well.
Yeah.
Um, Good. So it's fun, it's natural, it's happening, and yet there are these wounds, right? The
Yeah.
wounds that drive us, the longing that drive us in these spaces of connection to be together again in the ways that our souls remember. Um, Talk a little bit about that. What are you seeing within the capacity of women to enter into the shadow, support each other, and move forward with an integrated shadow?
Mm. I mean, part of it is that not every woman feels the same. That we're using these identifying factors of the man or the woman or the mother or the elder, and even within those identities, there's so much diversity. And, I'm not qualified to speak on behalf of all women, and I mean, maybe that part of it, that level of diversity is actually really incredible, but can also be one of the biggest challenges because we're wanting to come into places where we're, naturally understood for who we are and accepted and loved and um, cared for. And some women, I mean, so maybe I'll back up with like, it's called the Temple of Belonging. And that name came years before I knew what the name was for. And then it was like 2 years in where I was like, damn, this is a big name. Are
It's
we a
it's what
temple
got
of
my
belonging?
attention.
I was like, damn, this is huge. And so I've kind of had to do my due diligence by studying the nature of belonging as much integrity as I can, and also not being the authority or the definer of what belonging is for anybody, because it has to be this shared experience where there is diversity and everybody gets to have these different sensations and desires and experiences of what belonging is, and they all belong. Ha ha ha. And so I think the challenge is to not homogenize and to have that like sensation and experience of safety within a diverse field. And it's like, yes, we're all identifying as women. And so in that way, like it is not that diverse in that way. And within everything that can be called woman, there's so much. And I think, how do I want to answer this? There's a slowing down that feels required for us to come back into right relationship with each other. Um, because we just get excited. I'm a very excitable lassie. Um, but it lives in the realm of like when we don't slow down, we live in this false reality of assumptions and projections, right? And that can show up in finances, that can show up in health, that can show up in, I mean, we're creating assumptions and living in our projection field, and then we can shoot that arrow in any direction. And so part of the work is to try to get, maybe isn't the right way to say it, but to invite women into seeing each other outside of these face value identities that we're walking with. Um, and that takes cleverness and it takes a hero's dose of curiosity um, to say, okay, this woman dresses. Oh, that kicking the camera. See, I told you I was excited. Um, like I have a sister who's never been to the gathering, and she's like, it's just for goddesses. And I was like, what? Is it? One, what do you mean by that? Two, you've never been. You literally have no idea what it's about and what it feels like. And then there's women there that feel like it's so rootsy and real, or like it's just down to earth, like we're just homies. Some of us are like kind of gangsters, some of us are goddesses, like it's just all in the field. And the barrier and the challenge is like we put each other in these little boxes of who we think we are because then it's decided and then we feel safe. Um, and I think that's what a lot of our assumptions are doing unconsciously is that if I tell myself that I know who you are instead of asking you what you might actually be like, then it's no longer a mystery. And then I feel safe because it's already figured out, even if it's not true. even if it's like anti you or anti me, or how much of our projections and assumptions can really like lean towards our negative confirmation bias situation. And so I think that's underneath a lot of the more systemic issues that like women might face in the world and what we're really addressing here on a very simple human to human relationship. I see it as just this willingness to say, I don't know who you are until I do. And that's terrifying for people
Mm. Right,
because then
because
we
then they
have to
need
be
to then
wrong.
yeah, yeah, and people need to know themselves in order to be in that situation on the other end of it, to receive the grace of that space of who are you,
Right.
and and then
Well,
can we tend to that space so that it unfolds in a beautifully invited way with edges and all. You touched on so many beautiful things. Yeah. Wow.
I mean, do you feel like people actually do need to know themselves in order to stay in that sphere of curiosity? Because I also feel like
No,
sometimes like
no,
know
no. I think
thyself is a lot of pressure.
right. Well, I think it comes with pressure if it's if it's like an end game, right? Like as if there is like one thing that you are, but can we remain in that query and that curiosity and that the ever witness aspect of self that allows the emergent, the metamorphic to continue to bubble up in our expression of culture, which is really what I'm hearing you talk about, is establishing a culture of togetherness, of connection, of belonging, and all that that entails. And it's a huge cornucopia. And this is one of the things where I struggle with the modern men's work, is that we have these archetypes as if that's the place to stay. But for
Mm,
me, an archetype is an entry point of singularity in which to dive into the multiplicity that you're talking about, the many dimensions and layers of these aspects of self. Um,
mm,
and the tendency that I've really seen the past 5 years is this like identitarian crisis, right? Where it's like I have to establish who I am, and everyone else has to agree with
right.
that. And if I don't feel that, then it's really hard for me. And so, you said right, it's
Right.
terrifying, right? We have to like step onto the altar of unknowing in order to show up in a way that um, works
Uh-huh.
for longevity of togetherness, longevity of organization, and association. I think it's really beautiful, though, the way you share that. Thank you.
I think it's also
And
really heartbreaking to,
say it again.
it feels really heartbreaking, and I can feel my little eyes watering just thinking about um, this self-obsession. Maybe that identitarian crisis that you're speaking to is this shadow side of, well, all kinds of things that are beautiful and gorgeous, but this I need to know who I am. And at some point, that is such a limiting factor to being alive, to being in service, to becoming an elder, enjoying the day. Like the flower keeps turning and awareness keeps turning in on itself so much so I need to know who you are and I need to know who I am. And then like we can't do anything until that.
So I'm gonna have you pause there for a second, just because you got really broken up for a moment. We lost video and it got a little gargled. So, and maybe Riverside is making the corrections. We hope so. With all that is coming through.
I just can't handle the
It,
consciousness.
yeah, now there's like all kinds of echo and stuff. Goodness gracious. See, this is what all of a sudden the technology gods start to sense these truths coming out, and they're like, we're gonna disrupt a little bit.
Turn them down, turn them
So we'll push through and have faith that things are getting captured. Um, but I liked what you were saying, like know thyself is an invitation, but can also feel like a trap as well, right? And that it can lead to, like Stephen Jenkinson talks about, the how much growth when it comes to personal growth is too much. How has the attention been turned to self too long so that it becomes blinded to what's actually needed outside? And then our own personal defining is super limiting. And I often encourage the men I'm with who have no relationship to prayer to look at the example of what religions do. They're always telling the divine exactly what it is, right? I'm like, maybe why don't you go ask, see if there's something new that wants to speak to you that is outside of the almighty, the all-knowing, like what can that too be a portal of great curiosity into the myriad, unfathomable expression of life. So I think it's really important stuff. And you talked about the heartache, and we often, the men I roll with deeply, we call ourselves the society of the perpetually brokenhearted. And that we turn it into our superpower. We turn it into our motivation to create culture of belonging and remembrance of right? Because that's when know thyself becomes merely a exercise of the will, then the remembering aspect dims from what I can tell, and so the society of the perpetually brokenhearted tend to the brokenhearted and also dare to dream of the future through this lens that that comes down as orphan wisdom. And I really teach a lot. The cultural aspects of what I teach are so much through this kind of under heralded archetype of the orphan. And I would like you to speak to how that archetype resonates for you, how you've related to that in your life.
The orphan archetype?
You're still in Gargle Land.
I think it's passion. I think it's gonna all the special words.
Yeah, let me see. Is your mic through your headphones or is it through your computer or your phone?
It should be through my headphones.
All right. And they're fully charged? Because sometimes if they get,
I mean, yeah.
yeah. Okay. Well, let's just roll with it and we'll do the best we can with how we are.
Well, well, worst case scenario, I'm gonna talk again some in person. Exactly. Okay. So you're asking about the orphan archetype specifically?
So I've completely lost you um vocally, so I'm gonna pause.
Okay.
Okay. All right. We are back after our short battle and victorious trip to the field with the technology gods. And we're back on the subject of orphan wisdom and the archetype and how it plays into Jenny's experience of self.
I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I've worked much with the orphan archetype. And, but in this moment, I think I have, but maybe I haven't given it that name. Um, in my upbringing, I was pretty unparented. Um, Both my mothers left when I was 10, my mom and then my stepmom. And then my dad worked two jobs, and he was a rock star in a band at night. So he was just gone every night. So there was a lot of me being out there. And I think I've identified that more as like a feral, the feral wild child. But we were in the city. Um, but something maybe that feels true to offer to this conversation, and I'd love to know more about your like your relationship with the orphan, is that in the lack of a lot of parental guidance, it opened me up to a lot of other forms of guidance where I feel in like my adult deprogramming, deconditioning journey, there wasn't a lot of like traditional conditioning to unwind. I think there was a lot of trauma to unwind, and there was a lot of healing to do around my heart and my sense of belonging and like wanting to be here and feeling loved and valued. Um, but I used to say I have the privilege of never growing up with any religious context. Um, and so there was a pretty big void of guidance and connection to spirit. Anyone to teach me about consequences really had to learn those on my own. as an adult, which was a bummer. Honestly, still learning about that. Um, but it created this big longing to learn and to connect, and it gifted me this strange, long, weird, roundabout life that has led me to where I feel really empowered to choose what's true for me. I felt like I wasn't plugged in to an already decided set of beliefs and rules and family values. It was just so open ended that now I get to choose what family means to me because I get to choose. And I get to choose what spirit and God and nature and earth and connection means to me because I get to choose. And it's quite different than the rest of my family. Um, so, yeah, I think the orphan archetype has led to a lot of empowered choices and path making. And it also gifted a deep, deep, borderline insatiable hunger towards connection and community and finding relationships with people, literal humans, that feel like beauty and feel like home and feel like safety. Um, yeah, that's what I've got on.
There it is. That was, the way that we hold the orphan. When I saw that your thing was called the Temple of Belonging, when I was kind of venturing out, and when I was curious, I'm like, wow, what are the women up to? To me, that is an orphan song to name something the Temple of Belonging, because in belonging, there's fostering, right? And so for us, the orphan is the one who beseeches creation for fostering, for the fostering that was not provided through initiatory society that led us to the inward spaces that allowed us to see our place within the cosmos and on earth. The culture holders, the story holders, and the orphan has a longing for those things. And some of the nature of the perpetually brokenhearted is because we didn't have those fires to sit around and hear the stories and hear the songs, and we're put in a position to consume things from a global marketplace culturally, and then all of a sudden, come 2019 or so, people start to tell us what we can and cannot utilize and enjoy as culture. And so for me, the orphan archetype has been a real portal of creativity, in that it is the one who seeks the co-conspirator relationships beyond the human realm, to seek those relationships of place that will assist in building culture. And it sounds like your life has very much been that. And then there's the human, right, with their choices right there always, you know. And it sounds like your dog agrees with us. There's the
I
ancestors
mean,
right there,
you and
letting us all let us all know. Oh, all right.
I mean, I think that's interesting too, is that not only were we not sitting around the fire, but now when the fires are around and saying, come, you belong here, it's welcome, how many of us are still like, really? Is it okay? And how to be in right relationship with these different models of belonging. I think part of it is, the belief systems that were gifted in the lack of belonging or in the orphan archetypal experiences, that the storytelling that we tell ourselves that we don't belong, or that we want to belong in places um, that we don't actually want to belong. There's just that sensation of belonging. But I wonder about the process of like building our capacity to belong, right? Because if we spend our whole lives feral, or our whole lives not belonging, our whole lives not feeling safe, not feeling related to or connected to or guided or stewarded in a good way, then when there's so many there, from where I'm sitting, I feel like there's so much invitation into these practices and communities and processes of initiation and right relationship and belonging, not only to each other but to earth, to life, to spirit, to the mystery. And something that I see a lot is that those doors are open, and we still have to be the ones that are like walking through them in as best a way as we can, and what needs to happen intrapersonally for us to actually be ready to walk through those doors and to sit at these council fires in a way that's clean and honest and in integrity, you know?
Yeah, it's a fine line and a funny dance that we are really seeing play out in live time right now for those who are tuned into the psycho-spiritual dramas unfolding on Instagram right now.
Yeah.
Um, and this idea of personal truth, it's my truth, um, which is something I've learned a lot about in the past 5 years, dealing with so many men and also entering into the indigenous perspective of what the hell is a personal truth? Like,
Mm-hmm.
does that exist? And in these spaces where we're asking people to belong, I often find the shadow of performance thinks that it needs to show up. And that is part of that kind of tension for people. They're like, oh, well, only those who are perfect at something. And so you use the word clean, which I think is a slippery slope a little bit, right? But I like to think of it as willing to polish. Sincerity, right? Authentic, right? And that's the other piece of the orphan piece, and something we sometimes call the settler's heart, is the authentic nature, because we've seen a lot of taking on of shamanic identities, goddess identities, kingly warrior identities, and all these things, which is all this beautiful part of the landscape of the myriad human being. And so I'm curious for you, like as a performer and now as a ceremonial leader, how you find that dance with yourself and how you weave that balance of your personal expression and that which is needed in the moment.
With just a lot of humility. And frankly, like I wield joy and play um, as often as I can, because it softens something that in the room, in my body, in the bodies of other people, that wants to be softened. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna say the weird thing, I'm gonna do the weird thing, just so that we can be like, we're fucking humans. Nobody actually knows what's going on. Okay, now we can have the conversation. Um, and so I think when I hold space, I mean, wish you could, but you can't. But I'm like emceeing Temple of Belonging, and it's at least 65% stand up comedy. And people are like, why is she like that? And I'm like, literally born this way. Like, I just have this, once again, type of personality. And yeah, and it's like a little bit of the coyote meets like there's a wisdom to like, let's just chill. Let's just laugh at ourselves. Let's just like not take this so serious. Let's look around and realize that we think the same things are funny and we're all kind of a little tight. And I'm interested in softening, because once things can soften, then the space, the room, the event, my body, my connection kind of knows what to do, because the path is just a little bit more clear from the holding patterns that can so easily happen um, in spaces that have deep meaning, whether that's a conversation with a beloved, whether that's facilitating a group of people doing breath work, whether that's producing a giant women's gathering. You know, it's like, I don't know best. Um, and when I can position myself behind myself in such a way where it's like, I don't know what the right thing to do is here. I'm going to show up and engage and listen and offer and see what happens. It is kind of a similar sentiment to that level of curiosity. And I think I personally have had the great privilege of like being really canceled on getting it wrong. And that's gifted me a lot of like, not fuck it mentality, but like, I'm not as afraid of getting it wrong, which actually helps me connect with people a lot more bravely, because I think we hold ourselves back and we try to get it right and not cause harm. And that limits a lot of that authentic flow. That limits a lot of our ability to channel and listen to the space based on what's wanting to come through, you know? And so I think there's other ways to learn how to do that without getting it wrong a lot. But also, ironically, I do teach a course called Truth Training. And part of my advice right out the gate is like, get it wrong. Know what that feels like and realize that you're going to survive. So then, how can we communicate without that filter of fear? Without all of our space holding and facilitating and prayers coming from this tense experience of, I'm actually terrified to get it wrong, instead of, I just want to know how this works. I just actually want to know how to relate. I want to know what this space needs. And I can't access that if I'm afraid, or as afraid, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Or unwilling to move towards the fear.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I've begun to understand. I'm like, oh, I'm nervous. This is the right where I'm supposed to be. All right, let's do it. I love so much of that, and it really reflects a lot too from me, from my experience and how I've shifted. I just did my first men's gathering in a year. Took a year off after, you know, being with thousands of men, and um, you know, I've been to a lot of opening circles, you know, and calling in the directions and hailing the elements, thanking the ancestors and land acknowledgement and, you know, all the things. And it's very solemn. And oftentimes I would, you know, I'm tracking the group when they come in. I'm like, okay, that dude has absolutely no idea what this is about. That guy is like wondering if his pastor is going to tell him he's been worshiping demons, like whatever it is, right? Like all these like things. And so I started this last event simply with a game. We played a ball game,
Yes. Yeah.
and it was the best. And I love that you touched on, you know, like, to me, I often say in when I'm teaching is the child is the only true scientist because they're willing to make mistakes. They're willing to get it wrong and do it over and over and over again, and to refine and refine and refine within that experience of getting it wrong, and until that golden moment
Mm-hmm.
of accomplishment and mastery. And even with things around mastery, people often confuse mastery with perfection, but mastery is this ability to revisit the foundation over and over again, and be lifted by the foundation of our ability and skill, and then allowing something new to come through that revisiting. Play is so important. And then for me, that creates the juxtaposition, because we went into, you know, into heavier ceremony, you know, from there, but people were ready. You know, they were open, like you said, they had softened. They're like, oh, you know, I even had them like, you know, I grew up in a time where you go to the playground and meet new kids. You'd be like, my name's Hunter, what's your name? You know, and so we just did that, like with the ball. My name's Hunter, what's your name? Throw it to Jenny. My name's Jenny, what's your name? You know, yeah, there's been so much seriousness in the human development pop culture movement, because people desperately wanted to be seen as an authority, which to me is the symptom that, you know, we've been growing up in, of expertitis, and which actually dims the voice of the true expert. But yeah, what an amazing opportunity to be wrong,
Mm-hmm.
to be an unknowing, you know. And you know, Stephen Jenkinson talks about this too, that the truth is different than truing, right? Giving ourselves the opportunity to bring ourselves into a truing, through our attunement comes the atonement, right? This clear chord that can ring once we, you know, let the dissonant, untuned notes ring a little bit, and slowly but surely we can get there. Um, yeah, play, so essential. You know, it's interesting working with the Hokahe, with the trickster energy, and seeing the shadow of it as well, which is chaos for chaos sake, um, or the inability to stay in a stoic um, space once it arises,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I've found the more I can goof, the more I can be still,
Mm-hmm.
right? It kind of like pulls that polarity out. And you know, you know, having focused so much on men, there comes a time where it's really good to be 51 and I can be stern and be like, that is not now. There's a time and a place for that. And we give that, make sure that place is there. And that's what I feel like my responsibility as a leader is to continue to make those invitations. And when it's time to hold the line, it's time to hold the line, you know. But my capacity to do that in an invitational manner has greatly expanded the more I bring play into the practice. So thank you for highlighting that. Um, yeah, beautiful. I'm curious, are you a recording artist? You are, yes.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit on the retired side, but I'll never stop.
Yeah. Anything new coming out? Anything that you want the people to know that you're excited about? Where is writing taking you these days?
Just into my own feelings. Yeah, it's not going anywhere at the moment. It's just kind of a personal practice. I'm like playing music at little wineries around Hood River. It was like my childhood dream to be a musician, and I did it before COVID, and like I paid all my bills playing songs at bars with drunk people that weren't listening, and I was like, ah, and so I think I've put a lot of that down. At least the hopes and dreams of like whatever. And I've also been on stage for so long, and I'm frankly a little fatigued of the come to my show, come to my women's gathering, come to my course, come and get a massage. I just feel like for the last 15 years, I'm just like roping people in. And I'm like, fuck.
Promotions.
And so I'm just letting myself rest without, going too far into poverty. But just, I'm in a season of just listening and enjoying music and song where it comes, and I feel like I have these two sides of me in general where like I love playing music at the wine bar and cracking jokes and singing songs about my heartbreak. And it's just like big medicine for people. And then I love singing non words to people during breathwave ceremonies and watching how sound changes the embodied experience when people are in like an altered state. And they're not separate, but just kind of trying to root into what music medicine can be. Um, and just, I mean, I would love to record a handful of songs that I have, but that's when I'm just like, oh, it costs this much money to record and I'm not good at promoting it once it's recorded. So what's the point? Do I just keep singing it for the people that are around, but it's kind of a lackluster answer. Um, but yeah, I feel like I've done
Oh
it
wow.
and I'm interested in, I feel just like I have too many passions, to be honest. There's just so many
Yeah.
different, the river is like so many different tributaries, and maybe you can relate where I can be really plagued by all the things that I'm interested and like, oh no, all the things that I'm so good at. But then it's like, what do I focus on? What do I do? And I've had this prayer of like all of me where breath work and my coaching practice and temple and my music is all going to coalesce into like one thing. And I'm like, that is not going to happen. I don't know what that would be. Oh, it might just be my life. Interesting. Maybe that's just what it
Right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like, that's what I told the men when we were gathering. I'm like, this is how we live our lives, and you are now welcome in them. And yesterday I was a guest on a podcast, and we talked about the Renaissance nature of the liberated human being, and how, this age, the Renaissance, that's so people consider it a height of society, of civilization. But these men and women had broad breadths of expression within many disciplines. And let's face it, it was mostly men. Um, and so, yeah, how do we tend to that? I think that's it's like a symptom of freedom right?
Yeah.
And then there's a responsibility within it too, to remain nourished and in service. And that's what I found in mine when I was able to gear, because I'd also had the bands, tried the stage, and it's like, this is not the consciousness that I want to be in so much. And yet I have to sing, I have to celebrate and praise and lament through song. And I have found that this belonging culture is a place where that is very much welcome, especially the more I orient towards sing-alongs and call and response music, and to include, right, to no longer to come off the stage. Sometimes I struggle with some of these new age music concerts. They're telling everyone to be quiet because this is a ceremony, and I'm like, but you're on a stage. So how do we all get down on the same level? Maybe just physically. I saw a great show lately. For those who don't know, Protege, one of the, modern reggae great. He's doing it like no one other. And this producer, uh, Tippy I-Grade, and they were in the center of the dance floor with, it was old Jamaican DJ style. So they had their DJ and just a mic, and it was just like, oh yeah, like this is a ceremony without telling anyone to be quiet. Right. And so I really feel like that's part of the responsibility of those moving forward with these human development things, is to get as many people on the stage at one time as possible. And that means us, right? Being humble and coming down off the stage and saying, we're doing this together. And I need to be accountable to all of this as well. That star status is no longer viable, right? There's no diplomatic immunity in being the guy, being, the gal up there. So yeah, it's kind of uncharted territory to a certain degree, and so that's why we would call it an orphan way, right? We're seeking fostering from all those individual guides and presences that we know honor us with their attentions, and we can move with that. Beautiful.
I'm curious. Can I ask you
You
a
know,
question?
yeah, please.
I'm curious because just so with that last piece there, like I think a lot of people listening or just in general can probably also identify with that orphan, the seeking, the longing, the looking, and I believe that a lot of people that are coming to, let's say, indigenous practices or mystical teachings or temples of belonging, like they're hungry, they want to come, but maybe they haven't learned how to be in that right relationship. Like, what would you say? How do we orphan well? How do we orphan in integrity? How do we orphan with self responsibility? If the orphan hasn't
We
learned those from maybe loving parents thus far.
Yeah, well, the first we look and see what is missing to know what we are seeking, right? The love and the support and the togetherness. Um, it starts where you are, right? We often say we don't seek what was found, we seek what they sought. And so, how did they do that? They paid attention a lot to nature. They made commitments of self. They made direct declarations. It's like, you know, some people would consider it insane what I do, because I speak to landscape. I take away any need for poetry, although poetry will come in the moment. I put all that aside. The orphan hasn't memorized Psalms. He hasn't memorized anything from the Bhagavad Gita. The orphan comes and states, I know nothing, and I am longing to bring forward culture that is in relationship to the karmic river that has landed me here. She goes there with her weeping and her desire for support. And the more we pay attention as we make our travels, we know there's places where the mana, the life energy, bubbles richly, even more so than in other areas. Us living in this line of volcanoes where there's spots, right? White Salmon River, this mystical consciousness just, there for us. So I seek out those places, and I seek out those places with offering and wooing. And that's the other aspect of orphanhood is that there's a romance to it. There's a wooing, right? Like calling in. It's not like we don't have to be perfect. The orphan understands that it is not perfect and that pain is all around, and that within that we can seek peace and purpose and place. But it is very literal. Like, to seek what they saw is to enter into a literal animism. And books are fine, but the relationship is what is. And the culture that comes out of that relationship will be the peer-reviewed paper, so to speak, right? Do the songs that come speak to the condition of the people that are coming in? Are the, I often say there's only one prayer needed for people such as you and I, is please prepare me for what will be needed of me. Right? Beyond that, it's kind of, gravy. So the orphan gets up at dawn and greets the sun as though they're meeting him for the first time. The orphan begins to pay attention to the moon cycles and that which arises in them. The orphan pays attention to the seasons and sits and puts their phone far away and watches leaves fall and looks within the world animate for self, so that he can come and say, you are in me and I am in you. What do you want to do? Let's do something together, because I'm itchy and hungry and all these broken hearts need tending, just like mine. And so it's the integrity comes in the commitment and the willing to let go of a need for mystical experience all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The integrity comes in going when you don't want to, but you know that the river has something for you that day. The integrity comes in the offering. What are you giving in exchange? What is the currency of the relationship? Songs, sweets, tobacco, right? And we can mail order some things, or we can look around and we can take our curiosity and say, this is speaking to me, not because I Googled it, but because there's something there. So I'm going to sit and see if there's something that I can do, which is, I'm a guardian of Hawthorne medicine, which is, the expression of years of these commitments. And so, the other part of integrity is getting out of the 6 to 8 week challenge mentality, and into the 6 to 8 year commitment territory. Uh, um, and then, we really have to ask ourselves, what do we do when the uncommon becomes common? Right? People are seeking this consciousness, the mandala's opening and the serpents and all the beings there, right? So that we can know our place and things and be in awe and amazement. Well, what's going to happen when that becomes common to you, right? And how can we stay in awareness that all of these things of vision are true while we are rooted to what we need to do and bringing forward that impulse into the common, into the commons, into the commons of body, into the commons of spaces, into the commons of culture and place. And it is a willingness to go to the altar of not knowing every day and to begin to revel in the fear of it all. Maybe that touches on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm grateful that you get to do this work and that you get to hold that with other people that are looking for clear voices in the fog.
Yeah, clear voices in the fog, and I appreciate, when I was first, like, going the Instagram route, like, oh, what's going on over here? I'm like, oh, this seems grounded, which is that light in the fog, this willingness to continue to show up. So thank you for the way that you've been doing the things and coming again, right? To be canceled, as I call it, which is the fall, which is in the archetype of any great human development story, right? And yet we're taught that it's the worst thing and to hide it. I love that you're bringing that forward and saying, here I am again and again and again and again, and that same willingness. So thank you so much for that. I look forward to, doing, being in proximity outside of Flat World together so we can explore these topics further. And I'd love to have you back too at some point. But before we go, is there anything else that's really with you that you would like to put forward on the etheric waves?
Just honoring, I'm honoring this conversation and the bravery of your life path that you've took to be able to hold this way, and the weird, strange life that I've lived and up until this point. I'm sitting in my cabin, like looking out the window and being like, it's so obvious. It's all so obvious with anybody that has eyes to see. And not everybody does have eyes to see, and I think for whatever reason, just really, maybe to piggyback on that canceling piece and like to come back and say, well, fuck, I'm still made for this and there's nothing else that I'm qualified to do. So I'm going to come back and just like keep doing this thing. And it requires like to not be mad. I'm not mad at people because they didn't understand or they caused harm. I'm not mad that people, being the whatever I am, the mother of temple belongings, not easy. Because it's a lot to hold and there's a lot of responsibility. And I've been, taking a couple shots in the back, in all different kinds of ways. And it's just like, all right, okay, that happens. There's like this choice to just trust in the way that things come to be and what is required of each of us in the moment, I think is part of what you're speaking to as well. I think that's where I've learned how to find a lot of safety, and belonging seems to be pretty woven with this sensation of safety. And I wonder so often about that and what it actually means and what it actually feels like. But that prayer that you mentioned of like, what am I to do? What am I being prepared for? How can I be of service? And I don't trust that life's going to give me everything I want. I don't believe that our whole incarnation is just about getting what we want. And that's a little boring. But that can I trust myself that I'm going to know how to respond to life as it comes. I'm going to trust my center enough to meet life on life's terms, not just my terms. Right? And I think that's where some of that play and that sweetness is actually so much more available, from kind of opening the hand to being like, all right, it's not my preference. It's not the way I would have done it. And like, okay, who am I to say that it shouldn't be like that for this other person, or that this is how life is learning about itself in this moment, And so just really speaking to that, the joy of humility that doesn't have to be so scary and confronting if we can have the eyes to see what's happening.
That I often say, particularly with somatic lessons, is that it begins with the eyes, right? The softening begins there, the broadening, and just a little tool for the listener here. If you find yourself feeling isolated or overwhelmed out in the world, see if you can change your eyesight from object focus to periphery focus, to soften through a still eye and take in everything that's around you from a soft place. And it can really initiate the shift of changing our perception of where we are and how that we do belong. God damn it.
Damn it. Yeah, we do. And maybe
We
what it
do.
means, maybe something different than that Instagram meme that you saw, right? I think there's this, especially with the eyes, right? The other day I watched a movie before bed. Terrible idea. And then I couldn't go to sleep
Yeah.
because I was like, my eyes are poisoned with blue light. And other people, like, movies are dramatic and I cry a lot. And I was like, I'm feeling all their feelings. But just this taking our energy back from everything that we're being told is true. And this is what that means. And toxic masculinity is this and da da da. Being like, do I feel that way? Do I actually feel that way? Is that, I mean, kind of with your coin on personal truth, but I do value personal truth as a compass to be like, is this actually true for me? And I think that's the start of the conversation of individuation and of right relationship, of letting ourselves feel what we actually feel as separate from what we're being told we should feel. And maybe that's also part of the orphaning process of, it can be lonely to come back into, how do I feel as separate from what my tribe feels or what my tribe is telling me I should think and do and feel. But that to me feels like the metaphor of like the closing, the softening of the eyes, and being like, I'm going to take in this whole terrain, this whole experience, this whole engaging, and see what's actually here.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to be present when you are paying attention to where you are physically, to begin in the physical right here and right now. And yes, loneliness is part of the journey, right? It's what prepares us um, for the edges of connection. And I like what you said about personal truth as a personal compass, and how I relate to that is, does it bring me stillness? Does it bring me warmth? Does it bring me the ability to be in my gratitude 100%? And if it does, then I will trust it as a truth and move with it. Or does it give me, static? Does it give me edge and fire, not to run away, but something that needs to be attended to in order to come into the truing, into the process of truing? Just like we're trying to do here with New Elder Wisdom. It's like elding is the process from the choice, as you so beautifully touched on in the beginning, this choice point of, I will prepare to be unprepared and willing to walk in a way that'll be in service to the generations to come. Um, and the invitation to the world is to learn with us, to grow with us, and give us the space to learn and grow the whole way, to not place it on the elder to know everything, but to be attuned for when truth is spoken by the elder. So it's a wonderful time to be alive. We're gonna have a blast. We're gonna laugh. We're gonna cry. We're gonna holler. We're gonna dance. We're gonna be in deep silence. And we're gonna, just dance the maypole of paradox that is this earthly living.
Yeah. And we're going to do it forever. I mean, just that piece that you said, like, the child is like, okay, when are we going to get there? When are we going to arrive at, like, figured it out land and right relationship land? And it's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And it does not exist. We work on life and living and coming into ourselves. I think the whole time, that like the softening this expectation that we're going to get somewhere and it's all going to be better, instead of we just get better at living life as we go, maybe is a bit of another distinction between maybe not elderhood, but just maturity, versus the child masquerading around as an adult in a full grown body. Just to your
Yeah.
point, wanting to take the 6 week thing and like feel better and have it all be figured out. And I'm like,
And 6 to 8 week programs are of course amazing jumping off points, but what's important for the American consumer of developmental goals is to integrate it into a broader responsibility, not only towards self, but to community, family, community, and society. And I think that's, one of the reframes. This is a piece of something that I will continuously be expanding on. Yeah, it will be forever. I think so. Fortunately, we get some rest. Oh, I know what I want to say. You were talking about elderhood, and I had this thought the other day. Wouldn't it be amazing that our very last thought as we pass from this earthly realm is a curiosity, that we go out on a question?
mm,
And that's, I just brought this vision of mine, and maybe it's a little morbid and melancholic for the audience, but on my own deathbed, if I could all of a sudden be amazed at something I didn't know, and that was my final thought that led me from the physical. So I think
mm-hmm.
if that's a good jumping point off for death, perhaps, then let's let it continue to be a jumping off point for life, and continue to move into our awe, coolly on our responsibility, or our willingness to show up and do what's needed. And Jenny, thank you so much for what you're doing out there. Thanks for being with us today. But before we go, let the people know where they can find you, how they can interact more deeply with the work you're putting forward.
You can find me in my cabin. Just hang out in my cabin. How can you find me? Online. I have a website, thesacredwholeness.com. It's my healing arts website. You can find me also doing all the things for the Temple of Belonging. I play shows sometimes around Hood River. I'll sing you love songs and silly songs and make jokes in between. I'm gearing up to do another round of truth training. I'm trying to just listen. I've ran that course probably 8 times, and I mean, I hate to toot my own toot, but it's good. It's
That's
like,
toot the toot.
I'm
8
tooting the
times.
toot.
Look, you've done the full cycle, so you're a
Yeah.
crone in it now. So
Yeah, it's just really helpful to cut through the bullshit and to come back into our center and to learn how to relate to ourselves and other people and all the truths that exist in the field at once in a good way. So just planting that little seedling here that's coming back around, and I look forward to being with it, and we'll be hanging with my family and doing some ceremonies throughout the summer and kissing my dog and getting ticks and just being a fucking human. It's like I feel the bigness of my life sometimes, and then I'm like, it's also just sometimes it's just like normal. We're just people. And I'd love to just be people. So come and work with me, come get some breath work, come have conversations, and also down to have coffee, down to take the dogs to the river, down to chat, down to be
yeah,
human.
what's the coffee spot? Best coffee spot in Hood River?
My favorite coffee spot is Native over in White Salmon. Some of my friends
Yeah,
own
sure.
it, and they got the nice
They
fancy.
got do they have the cardamom buns there?
Not yet, but they have these like mochi muffins, like butter mochi muffins. They're pretty damn.
All right, so maybe if you swing in through the area, you'll see her there. If not, stay tuned to the ethereal. Jenny Jolly coming your way. Thank you so much for being here today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation in the future. All right. Mm.